The views and opinions expressed in the following program are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect those of KSMQ Public Service Media Incorporated or its assigns.
Welcome to Garden Connections. I'm your host, Stephanie Passingham. Today we visit a beautiful Rochester garden with Ken Zimmerman. Then we get ready for winter with a look at root cellars. And Chef Stephen Larsen gives us a Greek recipe for eggplant. Stay with us. Garden Connections is coming up next. Well, today we're going to talk a little bit about what you can do with all those wonderful vegetables that you've raised this season that are good for winter storage. And we are talking with Mike Larsen. Welcome to the program, Mike.
Hi, Stephanie.
So we're going to get to talking about root cellaring, but I want to give folks a little bit of a picture. You have an amazing place. And so I want to give a little background on how you got there and tell us a little bit about your place. So you used to live in the Twin Cities and now you're in southeastern Minnesota.
Yeah, so in 2012, we moved from our wonderful South Minneapolis neighborhood. I had a typical corporate job, left that, escaped from it, and we moved to 62 acres overlooking Whitewater State Park, and we built a very, what we might call an unconventional home. People call it an off-grid home.
Okay.
You know, so we have no power line coming into it. We heat it with wood. We have a composting toilet, and of course, a big part of it for us is all about food. That's kind of the center of that, because actually she'd be my wife here today. She's the food person. She's the cook. She's the one that got us on this journey and has led us on this journey. And if it weren't for her, we wouldn't have this root cellar we're going to be talking about.
All right, great. And off the grid often is confusing to folks in terms of, people who want to get away. And I love your approach that it's really tied to a closeness to the land, not an absence of people. Tell us a little bit about your philosophy.
Well, I think what I finally realized what I was getting away from in Minneapolis was I had outsourced my life. My electricity had been outsourced, my heat had been outsourced, my food had been outsourced. I wasn't coming from anybody I knew.
Right.
I didn't know if it was good, or how would I know if it was good or bad? So when we built this home, really, instead of off-grid, we think of it more as community reliant, that I can see what it all is. Whether it's electricity, we generate it from the sun. If it's our heat, it's from our wood. And if it's our food, we either grow it or it's from the land, or it's from our neighbors, and we can bring it all in. So we can see it, we know if we like it, and of course it's more fun.
I'm anxious to hear more about the food that you raise, and in particular how you store it. So we'll get into those details in just a moment. But right now, we are going to visit the garden of Ken and Adele Zimmerman, who were featured on the Rochester Garden and Flower Club Tour. Ken, you and Adele have done such a beautiful job with this garden. There's such a pop of color when you walk into the backyard. It looks great.
Thank you.
Where did you get your inspiration for what you've done here?
These gardens started out as little patches, about 10 or 15 feet in diameter, and they just kept growing over the last 20 years.
Okay.
My wife and children got the idea, and I got the rototiller, you know. So, the pagoda, we built that. We've had a couple weddings here and covered it with lights, and it turned out very nicely.
Very nice.
I think the favorite plant here, the one that has done the very best, are the limelight hydrangeas like these.
Gorgeous,
They're just starting to bloom. They'll stay in bloom for probably almost 2 months.
Wow.
And they just get the gorgeous white, is almost as big as the Annabelles, and they just stay there. And these plants are only
height and structure.
They're only 4 years old, and this is what they've done in 4 years. It didn't take 10 years to get these plants. So yes, they have done very well here.
Very well.
So,
and you do a nice mix of annuals and perennials. How do you select which plants you're going to put in here?
we visit nurseries, and we've done garden tours. We were just down to the Winona tour last weekend.
And you've got, again, some architectural interest, and they've been covered by these great clematis.
These clematis were blue from top to bottom for like 3 or 4 weeks. This is the very end now.
The tail end of their
you
season.
You can see all the ends of the blossoms that were here.
Yep.
And it's very important to pick the right size of clematis. Some will grow 3 or 4 feet high, some will grow 15 feet.
Okay,
And
so you need to have the right structure.
Right, get it to match what's going to hold them to match the plant. Otherwise you'll get a mound at the top that looks like a big gopher mound or something. Not what you want to see in your garden. So
you mentioned to me you're quite ruthless on what gets to stay. It kind of has to earn its keep here in the garden, and you've got some lovely bee balm that has taken up some good space and provides some color, but you told me maybe not exactly what you want.
2 criteria. Some plants are very invasive. 2 years ago, this was 1/4 of that size, and they just spread like crazy. And all you can do is keep digging them out. And anyone that raises a lot of perennials will say that's the biggest problem, is how invasive they are. And then secondly, it's a matter of taste, but I think these are dull compared to the color of the other plants. Just look at the yellow or the white or the pink. Yep. And so I think these are all going to get the shovel this fall. And so,
at least you're going to try, right?
Yeah, but just with the garden, if it doesn't earn its keep, get rid of it. They're not sacred, you know, and and it's fun to keep changing it. We're going to move a couple of the higher clematis this fall back here because they're too tall in the front of the garden. And so you just...
it kind of blocks your view from inside the house.
It's hard to figure everything out in advance, and when you see it, then you know what, that's all you can do.
Well, and it's okay to do that. I mean, I think that's what gardeners love. You know, they try something, it works great. If it doesn't, you can move them.
Yes, yeah, they're very portable.
I see you've got a great variety. You've got some roses back here as well.
Dormant fall is by far the best time to move them. It settles in over the winter. They start growing immediately in the spring, and you'll get much nicer plants.
You've done a beautiful job with your trees here in the backyard. They are a lovely attraction, and yet they don't interfere with what you're trying to do here. And I love how you've trimmed this tree. Tell us a little bit about how you get such a nice canopy overhead.
This is a sugar maple that gets brilliant red in the fall, and it's kind of a showpiece for the yard. But if you prune off a branch or two on the bottom each year as it grows up, and do it before the branches get big, then keep it going, and then get it as high as you want. We didn't want shade close to the ground. I want to walk underneath it and so forth. And then select branches coming out at a wide angle. That's very important. The narrow ones will split and break the tree. It's just happened to me.
So you want more like this, not
yes,
like this.
not like this. Get rid of one of them if you get a fork like that, because it's nothing but trouble. So,
show me another great time-saving idea that you have here in the garden.
Stephanie, this is our hosta garden, and it's in heavy shade and a variety of color.
Yeah, you've got striped ones, plain ones, big, small, nice variety there. And I love these. These are some of my favorite. These, are they tiger lilies?
Tiger lilies, yes, tiger lilies.
My great aunt had some of those, and I just adored them as children.
And clematis stands, the frost hurt them, but they usually go to the top of the stands. And these are low profile, nice to look out at, and an absolute minimum of maintenance. They just stay green all summer, and they're very nice plants to work with here this close.
They look great. One of the things I love about the way you garden, you know, you've got a ton of plants, but you found some really great ways to make life a little bit easier. And one of them are these pots for your annuals. Tell us how you stumbled across that idea.
Well, what I've done here, I bought just plain bushel baskets, plastic cheap bushel baskets, drilled some holes in the bottom, and then I filled them with potting soil while they were sitting out on a stand, planted the plants, and we dug them in. Each one of these impatiens, there's a pot that goes down just like that pot, like that one. And we plant them and set them in here, and it holds water, it makes watering easier. Just a number of things. It works better, but it's nice to plant the plants when it's out on a stand in front of you, not down on your hands and knees.
That's true. Then you're not crawling through the garden.
You're not stepping on the...
And pull them right out.
You're not stepping on the hostas behind you and so forth. So.
And another thing you told me about these is it helps deter some of that squirrel trouble too. When you pull them out, you see tunnels.
It's amazing, yes. And the best thing about them is that in the spring, we just leave them here all winter, and then in the spring, 2 of us take a hold and just pick them up, take a little wheelbarrow or trailer, dump the dirt out, the potting soil, and mix in new fertilizer, put it back together, put the plants in while it's right out in front of us, no stooping over.
That's right.
When it's all done, we set it back in and water it after we put it in, and voila, they're all planted. And
they look great?
Yes, and we put like a quarter of a cup of 10-10-10 and some Osmocote in each pot. When I've used the same potting soil for at least 7 years now.
Wow, and you just kind of refresh it every spring.
And you just add the fertilizer every year. I don't know how long it'll last, but I thought after the first year it'd be no good, but yes again. So.
Yeah, but they look great. I don't think they mind.
Yeah. So.
Another fun thing you have in the garden kind of spread throughout is all this great statuary. That looks really cute. Tell me how you decided to add all those, because you have several pieces.
We picked out ones, and the turtle was just cute with a big happy face. And we want to have enjoyable and happiness personified here. And yeah, most of the statues are action, you know, like the puppies chewing on the shoes.
On the shoe, right.
And playing leapfrog, and a lady swinging her little girl, and they show action. Especially kids just love it. I mean, it attracts them so quickly. It's interesting.
That's great. Well, let's go take a look at another time-saving device that you have put in your garden as well.
All right.
So I understand you've tried several things with edging, but this is the one that works. What have you got going here?
Well, this is the first thing that has not cost a lot of money and a great deal of frustration.
Okay.
It's a hard problem, but I just took 2x8 treated lumber. It's cheap, and you can get a kick sod cutter or do it by hand. Just dig a little trench. I sloped the boards a little bit so the mulch would stay in, and we just lay one board down, and then wherever it turned, you put one board on the top and overlap them, draw a line with a pencil, and take a skill saw and cut it. You can make any pattern that you want.
Seams. Yep.
And these have been here 3 years, and I have not touched a weed whacker back here. The lawnmower wheel, I have a rider mower. I put the wheel right up on the edge here and just go right on around. That's it.
And that's it.
And you want at least 8 inches wide so the grass roots don't come up underneath. I think 10 inches. Through. If I do more, I'm going to do 10 inches. A few blades of grass will come up. If you pick them up, you'll see the roots going all the way under.
I love your garden. It is full of beauty and color and lushness, and then you've got some really practical things that make it work.
It helps.
Thank you so much for letting us come out and view your garden. Really appreciate it.
Our pleasure. I hope everyone enjoys it.
Stay tuned for more Garden Connections. Well, that definitely was a very interesting garden, and I love seeing all the amazing homes they have on that tour. You'll have to make sure you check that out sometime. But we're here with Mike Larsen, and we're going to be talking about root cellaring. So you grow your own food, and obviously when you are kind of off the grid or connected to your community, you need a way to hang on to those vegetables over the winter. And so tell us a little bit about how the concept of a root cellar started fitting into your plan as you were developing your new home.
Well, it was kind of about saying, look, in Minnesota, how silly is it to buy cold in the winter? Right? That's essentially getting away from that idea. And if you want to store a lot of food, if you want to save your apples and your carrots and your potatoes and you need hundreds of pounds, what kind of a refrigerator are you going to build?
Right.
And how would you run it? And how would you do that locally? And you can't even do that sustainably very easily. So the root cellar idea, which is an ancient idea, came to Linda that we should have a root cellar to store all this stuff.
Okay, great. And so tell us a little bit about your root cellar. How big is it?
Okay, so the root cellar ours is kind of about 14 feet long, only 5 feet deep. So when you get in there, it's a little. You kind of squeeze along the edges with the shelves along the back.
Oh, okay.
It's kind of how it goes. It's long and skinny, and you access it just through. We have a basement, a small basement, being part of our home, and you can access it through a double door.
Okay.
Open the double doors, and you see a big concrete walls on all sides, and on the floor is rock.
Okay. Is there a special reason for that?
Everything we read, by the way, this was our gospel, root cellaring.
Okay.
We use this a lot with this book. And because they said, what you want to do is, first you have to encourage moisture off it to come up out of the ground, because a lot of things like carrots want to be moist. But other things do like it drier, so then you can have we actually store those things toward the top, wetter things toward the bottom,
Okay.
are some of the strategies we start to use with the root cellar.
Okay. How about how you store them? I've often heard you should store carrots in damp sand.
Yeah,
or
that's what we did.
certain kinds of shelving. Or
Yeah.
tell us about some of the things you've tried. What worked?
well,
what hasn't worked?
There's been, actually, that's what's funny. There's been as many failures as successes, to be honest.
Well, that's how we learn.
You know, for instance, apples. Apples, which is really the reason I wanted a root cellar, because there are hundreds of pounds of apples grown on our hill, and I wanted to store them all, but they give off ethylene oxide. And if you put them near carrots, the carrots sprout.
Oh.
That's a learning. So you learn, don't do that. You want to we store apples, and I need hundreds of pounds of apples to get me to April. then we need to keep them covered, just tightly covered. That's the trick.
So
with
you
the apple.
cover them.
Cover
So you
the
don't have a
apples.
separate cupboard
No,
in the cellar.
We
It's
don't.
all
We
open.
just have all these open shelves.
Okay.
And then so we have to decide for each spot in the shelf, what do we do?
Okay.
So like the carrots on the bottom go in a sandy bin. On the bottom, it's here. These are strong steel shelves. that
And
can-
you top your carrots, right? Completely?
Yep, completely topped on the carrots. The apples, so if we can, it's best to leave the stem on. You know, they get picked as they get picked, but
Okay.
they last a little longer.
If they keep the stem on.
Stem on, so a little bit of little tricks like that. But you know what? If any of this stuff goes, like if an apple starts to go, well, it's time for apple crisp or apple
okay.
mead or. Right?
Okay,
I mean,
so you
that's,
just move it out
you've got
right
to
away.
keep watching this stuff, and then as anything starts to go, oh, it's time for pork and apples.
Get that on the stovetop right
Right,
away.
right. So that's also part of it, is staying on top of, because things
you're
will
in there
go.
every day?
I'm in there. You know, Linda says, Mike, I need something. She does the cooking, and I often go down to the root cellar
Okay.
and get it for her. I guess the least I can do. Try to find stuff.
So when you're storing things, how deep can you pile them? Because you know you don't want to end up with that one bad apple on the bottom of the barrel.
Well,
that
that's
spoils
actually
your whole
what
bunch.
we've
Or
learned.
do you lay them out on
We've
single
actually
layers?
learned it's that's why you see our shelves are only about 12 inches tall.
Okay.
And so we can get many things on there. And then we actually have little wire baskets that we can stack.
Oh.
On there, we have wire baskets on the shelves, all metal. And so I think it's the same idea that got us the land, which is transparency. You want to be able to see how things are doing.
Okay.
If you can't, you're going to have problems.
Right.
It's like the stuff in the bottom of your freezer.
Yes, we've all had that problem.
Right. It's the same problem. So I think that's the main reason not to do it.
And does that help the air circulate through them as
actually,
well, or is that
okay.
a-
No, that helps a lot with air circulation, but you have to add. Make sure if you have a root cellar, make sure you put ventilation in it.
Okay.
So that's the other thing we did is we have on one end we have a big we have two holes in the root cellar in the ceiling.
Okay.
And one of them has a big downspout coming. That's the cold air essentially. So it's just passive to get the cold air coming in, and the warm air coming out. So that's ventilation because you got to because all vegetables and all fruits outgas.
Right.
You don't.
So you have to get that
you want
out
to get
of there.
that out of
and
there.
get the cold air
wanna-
in. You were telling
that's
me
the other
a really interesting thing about how even in Minnesota we think it's cold out in November.
It's
the
the problem.
earth is not necessarily.
Exactly. The Earth is still 55 degrees, and we're fighting that. We keep a thermometer in there, and right now, if you went in there, it'll say 55, 60. And it's been 32 every night. Every night. It's like frustrating, so we leave that open. And I've heard of people that have added a fan.
Okay.
We might just add a fan to
to add that
suck
as well.
that cold air, because by December, we get it down to 40. And then you got a nice refrigerator. December, January, February, March. You have 4 good months. November's the trick month.
That kind of change.
Yeah,
over
that
into-
changeover, because when the ground's warm and the outside air is cold, but you have all your vegetables.
All right.
They're all here.
We're going to pick your brain a little bit more, but right now we're going to Chef Stephen Larsen for a recipe with eggplant.
Hi, I'm Chef Stephen Larsen. Welcome to my kitchen in Quarter Quarter Restaurant in Harmony, Minnesota. Today's recipe is going to use eggplant. Now I'm using a standard sort of variety here, Black Beauty, but you can certainly use any other purple variety of eggplant for this dish, Chinese long eggplant or even the small Thai purple eggplant. So the first thing that we need to do is get this cut up, and the best way to do that is just to take that bare end off so that we get the leaf end, and then we'll just nip a bit of the flower end as well and take that off. Now since we're going to be grilling this, I want to make sure that the slices are relatively thick so they hold up well to the grilling. So we're going to go for about 3/4 of an inch to an inch. All right, and we're going to lay those out on our pan over here. And we're going to combine that with some zucchini, some sweet onion, and tomato. But we also need to make a marinade for this, which is kind of a dressing marinade combination. So we have the olive oil in the bowl. We're going to add some red wine vinegar to that. Nice shot of salt and freshly ground pepper. And we need some garlic. And we want that nice and finely minced. Okay, so that was 1 large clove. And then I've got a couple of tablespoons of fresh oregano leaves here, and I'm going to mince those down so we have about a tablespoon minced. Again, we want these relatively finely minced so that it spreads evenly throughout the dressing. And then we can just use a spoon to mix that up. And we'll top our onions and zucchini. And then we will move to the grill. Now, obviously I'm using my restaurant's char grill here, but you can certainly do this on an outdoor grill or even on a grill pan in your kitchen. So I want to put these marinade side down. We'll give them a few minutes and then turn them to cook them the rest of the way through. Now, one of the things, of course, that makes a dish Greek is to add some feta to it. So we're going to do that. We have some nice blocks of feta here, about 1/2 inch, 3/4 inch thick. We're going to put just a little drizzle of extra virgin olive oil on there. We'll spread that around a touch. And we're going to use a hot non-stick skillet to get some browning on the outside of this. Okay, so while the feta is browning, we're going to cut up our other vegetables while we keep an eye on that. So these we're just going to cut into a large dice, and into the bowl they go. Okay, we're going to let the cheese rest for just a couple of seconds while we finish the salad. So we have our diced vegetables. We're going to add a couple of cups of diced tomato and the rest of that marinade slash dressing. Then we can cut the cheese and put that in there. And as a final finish, a sprinkling of slivered pitted Kalamata olives. Greek style grilled eggplant and vegetable salad, because there's nothing better than eating fresh from your garden.
On Garden Connections, we'd love to see photos of your garden. Or if you have questions for our garden experts, contact us by emailing garden@ksmq.org or like us on Facebook. Another great recipe from the chef. He always has wonderful food. So we were talking a little bit about the things that you put in your root cellar, how you keep it cold, some of the techniques. Let's talk briefly about what you can put in there. Root cellar implies root vegetables. Can you put anything else? You mentioned apples.
Yeah, apples, and then the other two ones we do a lot of course, is winter squash. Lots of winter squash, keeps forever. They should put a little oil, we've learned to put oil on the outside of it. That's what Linda does.
Okay.
And then
like an olive oil?
Yeah, olive oil. Just coats the outside, and that helps to prevent the mold that you might get on it. And then also cabbage. And the trick there with cabbage is pick it fresh. I mean, get it. Don't let it sit on your kitchen counter for a day or two. Get it right down there. Pick it late, pick it crispy, put it in.
Okay.
And leave those outside leaves on. They're protectors.
Great. What about things like broccoli? You know, I'm thinking of the cold weather vegetables that people have that they love to leave in their garden till the very end. Kale is another one. Can you put those in a root cellar? So
we do once it gets down to refrigerator temperature. You know, that's kind of waiting until that December thing. So we actually go pick kale from our neighbors in December.
Oh, really?
Because you might as well after it freezes.
Sure.
It's great.
All right. Good tip. In all of your time working with a root cellar, what's the trickiest piece or what's the most interesting thing that you've learned that we can share with folks today?
I think it's about getting that temperature down fast enough. And one thing I've learned is do it simple. A root cellar can just be a cooler in the ground. And so I know people at first to get through November just use coolers.
Dig a hole, put a cooler.
Dig a hole, put a cooler in the ground, or just put it on the north side of your house. In November, it averages 40 degrees.
All right, great tip, and maybe a good way for people to get started before they invest in a full-blown structure.
Don't need all this.
Yep, all right,
Cooler.
Great. So you have a number of publications that you've turned to find information. You also are an author yourself. You have this great book, The Corridor, and it's a novel about folks who have a similar interest in going off the grid, which sounds so negative. I love the way you put it. Into the community.
Right, community reliant.
Community reliant. Great. Mike, thank you so much for being part of the show.
Thanks for inviting me,
Appreciate
Stephanie.
all your advice. And thank you for being with us today. I hope you've enjoyed today's program. I hope you'll give root cellaring a try. We'll see you next time on Garden Connections.